I never thought capturing wild predators would prepare me for the ultimate betrayal. When my wife brought another man to our bed and said, "I'm opening our marriage. If you have a problem, leave," I packed up and vanished into the wilderness. 3 days later, I got the call. She's no more. Now I'm forced to confront a savage truth. Sometimes the most dangerous predators aren't the ones I photograph. My name is Mitchell Coleman, though most people just call me Mitch. I'm 47 years old and own a wildlife photography gallery in Portland, Oregon that's become somewhat of a local landmark. My journey capturing the raw beauty of nature has taken me to 6 continents and earned me features in National Geographic and Wildlife Photographer of the Year. But no shot I've ever captured could compare to the moment I realized my life was a carefully constructed lie. I met Valerie Harrison at a charity auction where one of my photographs was being sold to benefit wildlife conservation. She was elegant, intelligent, and seemed genuinely interested in my work. Within a year, we were married, and I thought I'd found my perfect partner. Someone who understood my need to disappear into the wilderness for weeks at a time, who appreciated my art, who made our house feel like a home. When my stepdaughter Alyssa was just 10, her biological father walked out, leaving Valerie to raise her alone. After we married, I adopted Alyssa legally and emotionally. She became my daughter in every way that mattered. When she was 16, a rock climbing accident left her paralyzed from the waist down. The doctor said she'd never walk again, but they underestimated her determination. Now, 24, Alyssa is a Paralympic champion in wheelchair racing with her sights set on the next games. She inherited my stubborn nature and her mother's striking looks, tall, athletic build and auburn hair that catches fire in the sunlight. I couldn't be prouder of the woman she's become. Last spring, I returned early from a 3-week shoot in Alaska's Denali National Park. The assignment had gone better than expected. I'd captured a rare interaction between a wolf pack and a grizzly bear. Exhausted, but excited to share my work with Valerie, I walked through our front door at 2 a.m. instead of the following afternoon as planned. The house was quiet, but a strange car sat in our driveway. I didn't think much of it. Probably one of Valerie's friends had stayed late and decided to crash in our guest room. I set my equipment down carefully, grabbed a cold beer from the fridge, and headed to my office to back up my memory cards before I'd even think about sleep. As I passed our bedroom door, I heard Valerie's laughter, a sound I hadn't heard in months. My hand froze on the doorknob. Something in her tone made me hesitate. It wasn't just happiness I heard. There was an intimacy to it that made my stomach tighten. Beside her, a man's voice murmured something I couldn't make out. I stood there, camera bag still slung over my shoulder, as 20 years of trust began to unravel in an instant. I quietly set my camera bag down and took a deep breath. 20 years of marriage had earned me the right to walk through my own bedroom door without knocking. I turned the handle. What I saw burned itself into my memory more permanently than any photograph I'd ever taken. Valerie was sitting up in our bed, champagne glass in hand, with a man I'd never seen before. He was younger, maybe late 30s, with the polished look of someone who spent more on his haircut than I did on camera lenses. "Mitch." Valerie's expression cycled through shock, embarrassment, and then, strangely, irritation. "You weren't supposed to be home until tomorrow." "Clearly," I replied, my voice somehow steadier than the earthquake happening inside me. I looked at the stranger. "And you are?" The man smiled, actually smiled, and extended his hand as if we were meeting at a business conference. "Curtis Blackwell, financial advisor." His tone was casual, like being caught in my bed was merely an inconvenience. I ignored his hand. "Get out of my house." "Mitch, don't be dramatic," Valerie sighed, setting down her champagne. "Curtis isn't just leaving. We need to talk." "Now's not the time for a talk," I said, my hand gripping the doorframe to steady myself. "Actually, it is." Valerie straightened her silk robe. "I've been wanting to discuss this with you for months, but you're never home. Always off chasing bears or wolves or whatever." "Discuss what exactly?" The calm of my voice surprised even me. Valerie reached for Curtis's hand. "I'm opening our marriage, Mitch. Curtis and I have been seeing each other for almost a year, and I'm done hiding it. If you have a problem with that, well..." She gestured toward the door. "You know where the exit is." The audacity left me speechless. This wasn't a momentary lapse or a drunken mistake. This was a calculated decision she'd made without me. "You're bringing another man to our bed and giving me an ultimatum?" I finally managed. Curtis cleared his throat. Valerie and I feel that traditional monogamy is an outdated concept. Many modern couples are exploring new relationship paradigms. He sounded like he was pitching a financial investment. Get out. I repeated, each word like ice. Dad? What's going on? Alyssa's voice came from behind me. She must have wheeled herself down the hall, awakened by our voices. Valerie's face paled. Alyssa, go back to your room. This doesn't concern you. Like hell it doesn't, I said. This concerns this entire family that you're blowing apart. You're overreacting, Curtis interjected, reaching for his pants beside the bed. I stepped toward him, my hands clenched. You have 30 seconds to get dressed and out of my house before I throw you out the window. Something in my expression must have convinced him I wasn't bluffing. He hurriedly gathered his clothes. I turned to face my daughter, whose eyes reflected the same betrayal I felt. Alyssa, I'm sorry you had to see this. Don't apologize for her mistakes, Dad, she said firmly, her gaze locked on her mother. Curtis left in a hurry, tires screeching as he peeled out of our driveway. I couldn't bring myself to look at Valerie, knowing I might do or say something I'd regret. 20 years of memories were burning to ash in my mind. We need to talk about this like adults, Valerie said, tightening her robe. This doesn't have to be the end of anything. It already is, I replied, turning to Alyssa. Sweetheart, would you give us a moment? Alyssa's jaw was set, her eyes hard. Whatever you have to say to Mom, you can say in front of me. I'm not a child anymore. Valerie sighed dramatically. This is exactly why I didn't tell you, Mitch. I knew you'd make it into some melodrama, instead of seeing the opportunity. Opportunity. I laughed without humor. To what? Watch you destroy our family. To evolve. To grow beyond these restrictive ideas about marriage and fidelity. Valerie was getting animated now. Curtis understands me in ways you never have. He appreciates that I need more than just. Stop, Alyssa interrupted. Just stop, Mom. Dad's been nothing but supportive of you for 20 years. He adopted me when my own father walked out. He built you that studio in the garden. He flies home for every anniversary, even from the most remote assignments. Valerie's expression darkened. You always take a side. You don't understand what it's like to be married to someone who's never here, always chasing the perfect shot in some wilderness while I'm stuck at home. I'd heard enough. I walked to our closet and pulled out my expedition duffel bag. What are you doing? Valerie asked. What you suggested. I answered, methodically packing clothes. I'm leaving. Don't be ridiculous. Where will you go at this hour? I continued packing, adding my camera equipment, hard drives, and the framed photo of Alyssa winning her first Paralympic medal. I have a cabin on Mount Hood. You know that. You can't just walk away from this. We need to work through it, Valerie insisted, her confidence wavering. I zipped the bag closed. There's nothing to work through. You made your choice a year ago, according to you. I'm making mine now. Alyssa wheeled herself to my side. I'm coming with you, Dad. No, honey. You have training tomorrow, I said gently. Your coach will kill me if you miss it. Then I'll join you this weekend, she insisted. I nodded, then turned to Valerie. I'll be back when Curtis is gone to get the rest of my things. Mitch, you're overreacting. Valerie tried once more, but the fight was leaving her voice. I shouldered my bag and walked to the door, then stopped. Without turning around, I said, 20 years, Val. 20 years. And you couldn't even give me the dignity of a conversation before bringing him into our bed. Before she could respond, I was out the door and loaded my truck. By 3 a.m., I was driving east toward Mount Hood, the city lights fading behind me as the forest embraced me in darkness. In the wild, at least, betrayal had a purpose, survival. This felt like destruction for its own sake. The cabin welcomed me like an old friend. Rustic and remote, it sat on 10 acres of forested land with views of Mount Hood that could steal your breath. I'd purchased it years ago as a base for Pacific Northwest shoots, gradually turning it into a sanctuary where I could process my photographs and decompress between assignments. I unloaded my gear mechanically, moving on autopilot. The familiar smell of pine and wood smoke grounded me as I built a fire in the stone hearth. Outside, dawn was breaking over the mountains, painting the sky in the same pinks and golds I'd spent a lifetime capturing. But for once, I left my camera untouched. My phone had been buzzing nonstop since I left Portland. Valerie had called 17 times and left 9 messages. I listened to the first one. Mitch, this is childish. Come home, so we can discuss this like adults. Curtis won't be back tonight, I promise. I deleted it without listening to the others. Instead, I called my gallery manager, Sarah. Hey, boss, she answered cheerfully. Thought you were due back tomorrow. Change of plans, I replied, trying to keep my voice neutral. I'm at the cabin. Could you handle things at the gallery for a few days? I need some time. Sarah had worked with me for 8 years. She knew me well enough to hear what I wasn't saying. Of course. Everything okay? Not really. But it will be. I paused. If Valerie comes by, tell her I'm unavailable. Don't tell her where I am. After hanging up, I silenced my phone and tossed it on the couch. For the next 2 days, I existed in suspended animation. I chopped wood until my arms ached, hiked the surrounding trails until my legs gave out, and drank coffee on the porch watching eagles soar above the pines. At night, I nursed a whiskey and stared into the fire, trying to make sense of how 20 years could unravel in 20 minutes. On the third morning, a familiar sound pulled me from sleep, the specialized engine of Alyssa's adapted van. I stepped onto the porch as she expertly maneuvered her wheelchair down the custom ramp I'd installed years ago. You look terrible, she announced, taking in my unshaven face and rumpled clothes. Despite everything, I smiled. Good to see you too, kid. She wheeled up beside me, handing over a paper bag. Brought you real coffee and those blueberry scones you like from Pinewood Bakery. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the morning mist lift from the valley below. Mom's freaking out, Alyssa finally said. She's called everyone we know, trying to find you. Let her worry, I replied, more bitterness in my voice than I intended. Alyssa studied me carefully. That's not why I'm here. I don't care about her panic. I care about you. Her directness hit me like a physical force. This young woman, who had faced more challenges by 24 than most people do in a lifetime, was now holding me together. I'm okay, I lied. No, you're not, she countered. But you will be. We both will. She hesitated, then pulled out her phone. Dad, there's something you need to see. It just hit the local news this morning. I stared at Alyssa's phone, trying to make sense of the headline plastered across the screen. Renowned wildlife photographer's wife critical after suspected suicide attempt. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the article. According to the report, Valerie had been found unconscious in our home yesterday evening after ingesting a combination of alcohol and prescription medication. A close friend had discovered her and called 911. She was currently in intensive care at Portland Memorial, condition listed as critical. Is this real? My voice sounded distant to my own ears. Alyssa nodded grimly. I got the call from the hospital last night. They couldn't reach you. Why would she? I couldn't finish the sentence. Dad, there's more. Alyssa took a deep breath. The close friend who found her was Curtis. He's giving interviews to local news, painting himself as the devastated boyfriend and you as the cruel husband who abandoned her in her time of need. A cold fury replaced my initial shock. That son of a... I know, Alyssa interrupted. It's disgusting. But right now, we need to deal with the situation. The hospital needs someone to make decisions if... She stopped, unable to continue. Despite everything, Valerie was still my wife. 20 years couldn't be erased in 3 days, no matter what she'd done. We need to go, I said, already heading inside to grab my keys. The drive back to Portland was a blur. Alyssa made calls from the passenger seat, contacting our family lawyer and arranging for her coach to reschedule her training sessions. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, mind racing with conflicting emotions, anger at Curtis's manipulation, concern for Valerie despite her betrayal, and a gnawing guilt that wouldn't subside no matter how many times Alyssa assured me this wasn't my fault. Let me do the talking when we get there, Alyssa said as we approached the hospital. Curtis has been controlling the narrative. We need to set the record straight. The hospital parking lot was dotted with news vans. A local reporter recognized my truck and hurried over as we parked. Mr. Coleman, can we get a statement about your wife's condition? Sources say you left her after an argument. Did that trigger her suicide attempt? I started to respond, but Alyssa smoothly intervened, positioning her wheelchair between me and the reporter. My father just learned about this tragedy and rushed back to be by his wife's side. The family requests privacy during this difficult time. Any reports suggesting my father abandoned my mother are categorically false and potentially libelous. That's all we have to say. The reporter stepped back, surprised by her authoritative tone. We made our way inside, where the receptionist directed us to the ICU waiting area on the fourth floor. As the elevator doors opened, I saw him, Curtis Blackwell, surrounded by a small group of Valerie's friends, holding court like he belonged there. When he spotted us, his expression shifted from solicitude to alarm. "You have a lot of nerve showing up here," he said, rising to his feet. I took a step toward him, but Alyssa gripped my arm. "Now is not the time," she whispered. "Mom needs you. He's just noise." She was right, as usual. I walked past Curtis without a word, approaching the nurse's station instead. "I'm Mitchell Coleman. My wife, Valerie Coleman, was admitted last night." The ICU nurse regarded me with a mixture of suspicion and sympathy as she checked Valerie's chart. "She's stable for now, but still unconscious," she explained. "The doctor can give you more details." "Can I see her?" I asked. The nurse hesitated. "Family only at this point." "I'm her husband," I stated firmly. "There seems to be some confusion about that," she replied, glancing toward the waiting area where Curtis sat. "Another gentleman has been identifying himself as her partner." Alyssa wheeled forward. "My father is Valerie Coleman's legal husband of 20 years. That other man has known her for less than a year. We can provide documentation if necessary." The nurse nodded, properly chastened. "Of course. Follow me, Mr. Coleman." As I entered Valerie's room, the sight of her struck me like a physical blow. She looked small and pale against the white hospital sheets, tubes, and wires connecting her to various machines. Her vibrant auburn hair was dull and tangled around her face. I sat in the chair beside her bed, uncertain what to do or say. Despite her betrayal, seeing her so vulnerable awakened protective instincts I thought had died 3 nights ago. "The doctor will be in shortly," the nurse said before leaving us alone. I carefully took Valerie's hand, noting how cold it felt. "I'm here, Val." Her eyelids fluttered, but didn't open. For nearly an hour, I sat in silence, watching the steady rise and fall of her chest, listening to the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor. The anger that had sustained me since leaving our home was temporarily overshadowed by concern and confusion. Dr. Myers arrived, a tall woman with kind eyes and a direct manner. She explained that while Valerie was physically stable, they were concerned about potential liver damage from the combination of substances she had ingested. Was this a genuine suicide attempt? I asked quietly. Dr. Myers considered her response carefully. "In my professional opinion, Ms. Coleman's actions suggest more of a cry for help than a determined effort to end her life. The timing of the call to emergency services indicates she expected to be found by Curtis," I said bitterly. "I can't comment on that," Dr. Myers replied diplomatically. "But I would like to arrange a psychiatric evaluation when she regains consciousness." As the doctor left, Alyssa entered, her expression strained. "Dad, there's a police officer outside who wants to speak with you." Detective Santos was a compact man with observant eyes. He introduced himself as part of the department handling Valerie's case. "Standard procedure in suspected suicide attempts," he explained. "We need to rule out any other possibilities." "Such as?" I asked. "Foul play," he stated bluntly, "or staged attempts for publicity or insurance purposes." I stared at him. "You can't seriously think—" "I'm not suggesting anything, Mr. Coleman. Just covering all bases." He consulted his notebook. "Your wife's friend, Mr. Blackwell, mentioned you left the family home 3 nights ago following a confrontation. He suggested your abandonment might have triggered her actions." The audacity was breathtaking. "Detective, I discovered my wife in bed with that man. She informed me she was opening our marriage without my consent. When I objected, she told me I could leave. So I did." Santos studied me thoughtfully. "Interesting. That's not the version Mr. Blackwell shared. He claimed your wife suggested counseling to work through marital issues, and you refused." Before I could respond, Alyssa interrupted. "Detective, I was there that night. I witnessed everything. Curtis Blackwell is lying. For the next 24 hours, I barely left Valerie's bedside. Alyssa brought me coffee and kept the increasingly aggressive reporters at bay. Curtis attempted to visit twice, but hospital security, now clear on the actual family situation, denied him entry. On the morning of the second day, Valerie finally opened her eyes. "Mitch, Her voice was barely audible, raspy from the intubation tube they'd removed hours earlier. "I'm here," I said, leaning forward. She turned her head slightly, confusion clouding her features. "Why are you here? After what I did?" "You're still my wife," I replied simply. Tears filled her eyes. "I never meant for this to happen." "Which part?" Her gaze dropped. "Any of it. Curtis, he wasn't what I thought. Dr. Myers had warned me not to agitate Valerie, but I needed answers." "Why did you do it, Val? The pills, the alcohol." "I didn't," she whispered. "Not intentionally." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "Curtis brought wine to help me relax. He gave me something for anxiety. Said it would help me sleep. Next thing I remember is waking up here. A cold feeling settled in my stomach." "You're saying he drugged you?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But after you left, he changed. Started talking about accessing your gallery accounts, getting loans against the property. When I refused, he got angry." Detective Santos appeared in the doorway. "Mrs. Coleman, I'm glad to see you're awake. I have some questions about the events leading to your hospitalization." I moved to leave, but Valerie gripped my hand. "Stay, please." Santos recorded her statement as she described the last 3 days. Curtis's increasing agitation after I left, his focus on financial matters rather than their relationship, and finally, her growing suspicion about the night she was hospitalized. "We've been investigating Mr. Blackwell since your admission," Santos revealed. "His financial history shows a pattern of targeting wealthy women, then accessing their accounts. In several cases, the women experienced mysterious health episodes. He tried to kill me." Valerie's voice trembled. "We're still gathering evidence," Santos replied carefully. "But we've received a warrant to test your blood samples for substances beyond what you knowingly consumed." After Santos left, Valerie turned to me, her expression haunted. "Mitch, I've been so stupid. I've destroyed everything for a man who was just using me." I didn't contradict her. The anger that had sustained me for days was now redirected toward Curtis, but the damage to our marriage remained. "Alyssa told me what he's been saying to the press," she continued. "None of it's true. You have to know that." "I know," I said quietly. Valerie's eyes filled with tears again. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed you to hear the truth." Detective Santos moved quickly. By evening, the hospital had confirmed unusual levels of sedatives in Valerie's blood samples, far more than the single anxiety pill she remembered taking. Security camera footage showed Curtis adding something to her wine when she left the room. "We're preparing an arrest warrant," Santos informed me as we stood outside Valerie's room. "Mr. Blackwell's financial records show he's done this before. 3 other women in similar circumstances, though none quite as elaborate as this operation." "What was his endgame?" I asked. "Based on documents we found in his apartment, he was working on having your wife declared temporarily incompetent due to mental health issues. With the right paperwork, he could have gained control of her assets, and potentially yours through her. The calculated cruelty of it was staggering." Curtis had seen Valerie not as a person, but as an access point to wealth. I returned to find Alyssa sitting with her mother, their conversation stopping abruptly as I entered. "I'll give you two some privacy," Alyssa said, squeezing Valerie's hand before wheeling herself out. An uncomfortable silence settled between us. Despite Curtis's manipulation, the fundamental breach of trust remained. "The police are arresting Curtis," I finally said. "The hospital found evidence he drugged you." Valerie nodded weakly. "Detective Santos told me. I still can't believe I fell for his act. He was convincing." I offered, though the words fell hollow. "Not enough to justify what I did to you and Alyssa." Her voice cracked. "I've been talking with her. She told me everything. How hard she worked on that birthday party. How excited she was to surprise me." I sat in the chair beside her bed, unsure what to say. 20 years of marriage hung in the balance, damaged in ways that couldn't be easily repaired. "I don't expect you to forgive me," Valerie continued, "but I need you to know that I never stopped loving you. I got lost somewhere along the way, resenting your absences instead of appreciating your passion." She paused. "Curtis targeted that vulnerability perfectly. He nearly killed you, Val." "I know." She met my gaze directly. "And he would have gone after you and listened next. The police found detailed notes about your accounts, the gallery, even your life insurance policy." "The gallery." I suddenly remembered something critical. "I need to make a call." I told Valerie, stepping into the hallway. Sarah answered immediately. Mitch, thank God. I've been trying to reach you. Someone tried to access the gallery accounts this morning. Tried to initiate a wire transfer of almost $200,000. Curtis, I muttered. The bank flagged it because it required dual authentication. I never approved it. Call Detective Santos immediately, I instructed, giving her his number. Tell him everything. As I ended the call, Alyssa approached, her expression grim. Dad, you need to see this. She handed me her tablet, displaying Curtis's Instagram account. There, posted just 30 minutes ago, was a photo of me entering the hospital, captioned, "The man who abandoned his wife returns for the cameras. Too little, too late? Hashtag, thought he was wildlife. Hashtag, caught on camera." The arrest made national news. Financial predator arrested. Photographer's wife among victims. Ran across the bottom of every major network. Curtis's carefully crafted social media campaign backfired spectacularly once the evidence became public. The same outlets that had initially portrayed me as the villain now celebrated me as the loyal husband who stood by his wife despite her betrayal. I hated every minute of it. You should give a statement, urged James Miller, the gallery's PR consultant. This exposure could boost your profile significantly. I'm not using my wife's near-death experience to sell photographs. I replied firmly, ending the discussion. Valerie improved steadily over the next week. The doctors confirmed no permanent damage from the overdose, though the psychological impact would take longer to heal. I visited daily, our conversations gradually shifting from Curtis's manipulation to the deeper issues in our marriage. I resented your success, Valerie admitted during one such visit. Your passion for your work made me feel left behind. Curtis identified that vulnerability immediately. I should have seen how you were feeling, I acknowledged. Alyssa became our bridge, shuttling between the hospital and my cabin, where I'd retreated from the media circus. Her strength throughout the ordeal amazed me, especially considering her own sense of betrayal. How are you handling all this? I asked her one evening as we shared dinner at the cabin. Better than expected, she replied thoughtfully. In a weird way, it's clarified things. Mom made terrible choices, but she wasn't the monster I thought she was 3 weeks ago. And me? Do you think I'm making a mistake by not cutting her off completely? Alyssa considered this carefully. I think you're being the same man you've always been. Someone who doesn't abandon people, even when they hurt you. The police investigation uncovered the full extent of Curtis's operation. He had targeted at least 5 other women using the same playbook. Identify vulnerable, wealthy women, initiate relationships, gain financial access, and disappear. 2 had suffered accidental overdoses when they became suspicious. Curtis now faced multiple felony charges, with no possibility of bail given his flight risk. Valerie's reputation suffered, but she faced the consequences with unexpected dignity, giving a full statement to Detective Santos and offering to testify against Curtis. He needs to be stopped, she told me. If my humiliation helps accomplish that, it's worth it. As the media frenzy began to subside, I found myself at a crossroads. The foundation of my marriage had crumbled, yet something new and honest was emerging from the rubble. 3 months after Curtis's arrest, life had found a new rhythm. The gallery thrived under Sarah's management, allowing me to return to field photography. I spent 6 weeks in Yellowstone, capturing the spring awakening of the wilderness in a series that critics called my most intimate work yet. Valerie and I faced reality once the immediate crisis passed. Our marriage had sustained too much damage to simply repair and continue. We filed for divorce. The proceedings remarkably amicable given the circumstances. She moved to Seattle to be near her sister, starting a small interior design business that suited her creative talents. Thank you for not hating me, she said the day she left. I wouldn't have been so forgiving. Hatred takes too much energy, I replied honestly. I'd rather focus it elsewhere. That elsewhere became a foundation Alyssa and I established, providing photography workshops for disabled children. Watching her teach young people to see the world through a camera lens brought me more satisfaction than any gallery opening ever had. You're different now, Alyssa observed as we reviewed student photographs after a workshop. More present. She was right. Nearly losing everything had clarified what truly mattered. Success meant nothing without someone to share it with. And I'd neglected that truth for too long. Curtis Blackwell pleaded guilty to multiple felonies, accepting a 20-year sentence rather than face trial. His victims, including Valerie, received some financial restitution, though the emotional damage couldn't be so easily compensated. I never returned to our old house, selling it instead and donating half the proceeds to organizations supporting victims of financial abuse. The mountain cabin became my permanent home, its simple authenticity matching my new outlook. On the anniversary of that fateful night, I sat on the cabin's porch watching the sun set behind Mount Hood. Alyssa joined me, 2 steaming mugs of coffee in her lap. "Do you regret how things turned out?" she asked, handing me a mug. I considered the question carefully. "I regret the pain, especially yours, but not the outcome." She nodded understanding. "You know what's funny? Mom called me yesterday, wanted to contribute to the foundation. Said she's found some healing in helping others. Will you accept?" "I think so," Alyssa replied. "Some things are worth salvaging." As darkness settled over the mountains, I realized that while my marriage couldn't be saved, something more valuable had emerged: authenticity, purpose, and the unbreakable bond with the daughter who had become my compass through the darkest days. Sometimes you have to lose your focus to find what truly deserves to be in frame.